Hi there, this is Jim the Keys bartender coming to you from Key Largo. We got the triumphant return of Papa Joe from his world tour. And this episode will be episode, I think, 2012, if I'm not correct. And we're going to call it Saucy Aussie. Recently, I've seen an uptick on listeners from Australia. I'd like to thank those of you. I guess the area is Orange, Australia. I think it could be fellow podcasters. And Jenna and Tyler are on the other side of the house, and they're building another stairway as they get their house ready for sale. Do they have currently, Papa Joe, say hi to everyone. You go to Mike's on.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. Why don't we instead of getting right into that, we'll have a little chat. You were away. Can you talk about your job? You do security?
I can. I do security for the nuclear
Regulatory Commission, or?
Well, they oversee it. They oversee everything nuclear. So it's through a private security company contract.
You say that correctly, too.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
I mean, Homer Simpson knew how to say it, too.
Ooh.
Nuclear.
Nuclear. So we go out and we inspect shipments that are being made to nuclear facilities, mostly power plants.
Just two?
Yeah, going to any shipment that's going to a nuclear power station or a nuclear facility that we have a contract with, we search those shipments, we seal them, and of course, what we're looking for is what you would think we're looking for. Any explosive device, any contraband of any nature. That could be drugs, alcohol, bullets, anything explosive, anything to make explosive, gun parts, stuff like that. Anything that could end up becoming a useful tool for a subversive in a nuclear facility.
Okay.
And then, so we seal up the trucks and we send them on their way so that when they get to the facilities, the guards there can make sure the seals have not been tampered with or compromised and let them through. And what it does is it saves time. Take a nuclear power plant. When they go on what they call an outage, they got to shut down a reactor to do routine maintenance, which might involve changing pipes, valves, could even include the removal of the fuel rods.
Or testing, right? If they're running a test, like in that movie, did you see it?
Well, funny, because the last thing I did involved the equipment that is for testing.
Okay.
So, yes, but running a test. So but you got to shut the power down because you don't want to make a mistake and then cause
Did you see that movie?
Major problem.
Did you see that movie on HBO?
No, which one?
Chernobyl.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
was horrid.
It? I know, but it wasn't. Well, I mean, a Schindler's List was horrid, but it was a wonderful movie.
You know what was wonderful?
The acting was incredible. The way they laid it out and did everything here to explain it to. I mean, just I don't mean to get all enthusiastic and buoyant about a meltdown, but no, not the Holocaust. But when you see really good depictions of an event like the Holocaust, or maybe Dances with Wolves,
when someone puts together a good story is a good story.
But and then takes a complicated thing like, and we're having a really good storm coming right now. Papa Joe was very kind to make sure that they had these curtains at their tiki bar to make sure that we don't get rain on the equipment. So it's nice. We got a nice breeze going. Annie M, it looks like there's going to be a twister. It looks like it gets blowing in here so crazy. So it's the Keys, man. It was nice and steamy. We got a downpour. It looks like we're probably going to get a half inch of rain in about 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And it sounds like Tyler's still working in a downpour with power tools. And he said if any time the time to stop, it would be during a downpour.
Yeah,
probably.
I did hear thunder.
Yeah.
Maybe he should pause.
Is it time critical? Oh. Okay. So I diverged on you. You were talking about your job. So you were up and about. You may not. I mean, say what you can say when you say you're up in Pennsylvania, and
Yeah, I was in Pennsylvania at a site that provides material for, in this case, a nuclear power plant, and we had to make sure it was searched properly, but it was very delicate material because it did go for that testing you talked about.
yes,
The internal, the control center, and so you get, they handle it. The engineers handle it very delicately, and it's very meticulous. And so the packing of it, and the storing of it, and the sealing of it, when we seal it, it took a lot of time. So I spent 2 weeks, and we loaded 2 trucks. And it wasn't a lot going in each truck. It was just, that's how slow it had to go. So
you had to be meticulous. Got to be sure what's going in. You got to get detail. Shipping, what do you call it? Shipping papers or whatever.
the manifest,
Manifest.
that's on the engineers and the trucking company. But yes, the shipping manifest was probably about 14 pages long, with all the protocols on it, because if something goes wrong, plus it's in a refrigerated trailer to maintain a constant environment, because we're dealing with electronics.
So it's like 60 degrees or something like that?
Yes, exactly. They kept it at 60.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's exactly where they kept it. So, not so that you have a constant environment.
Yeah, and I know you
stays dry.
really you would want low humidity,
Right.
low temperature, not too low that
You don't want any. You don't. God forbid you even have initial condensation,
yeah.
and anything freezes on that,
Yeah.
you ruin it. So it had just 60 was where they put it, and that was fine. And
Static controls and all that stuff. So
well, it's all wrapped in static-free everything. So that had to be put in, and then it was shipped to the plant. And then from there, I went to another site, did some innocuous search of tools, just tools, and then I came home for 3 days, just in time for my grandchild to be born, and then I immediately left for another week, which turned into 9 days.
Okay. And how long you home for?
I think the season's over. My job is seasonal.
Contract.
It's all contracted, and so for the foreseeable future, I'm home.
There's a lot of people down here in the Keys. I know guys that work on oil rigs, offshore oil rigs and stuff like that. There's a friend of mine that does that. They're consultants. Another one, Stetson, he's an engineer that consults with the local nuclear power plant down here. I guess it's the Keys thing. You're near you're 50-something miles, 57 miles right from this area where we are right now. We're 57 miles from Miami International Airport. So that's pretty convenient being nearby. It's a major airport.
I fly out of Miami. It takes me, if I leave early, the wee hours, it takes me about roughly 45 to 50 minutes to get to the airport. And of course, like anything, if you leave at 5:30 in the morning, it takes you 2.5 hours.
That's exactly, that's
so
correct.
You schedule yourself
the nature of any big city, and you guys up in the Midwest, Northeast, know all that. And I guess the West Coast too. It comes to, I guess maybe we'll start in a minute or so. But I mentioned the listeners we have in Australia, and maybe Jenna could come on that about this too, see if she'd like to. We've had a uptick in our international listeners. We've always had our Polish because I have relatives over in Poland listening, and some people I met at the wedding I went to. But Australia, I've met some Australians, some really good. I always had a fondness for
from the down under.
Yes. The women, the guys are fun, and the women are even more fun and beautiful. I think they are fun.
I've never been.
Well, I mean,
have you ever been to Australia?
No, but I met him here.
Yeah, but still, yeah.
I know. I imagine if I met him here, and they're fun, and the women are beautiful, that would extend to where if I went there. and it was a good time. I guess my time to go and experience it firsthand as the way I would have wanted to experience it is past, but now I can experience the natural wonder of Australia.
Well, there you go.
If I go there. I always, if you know a little history of it, during the American Revolution, America, especially Georgia, was a penal colony for the British Empire. So they would send their prisoners over here, and they used them as labor indentured labor, serve out their sentences on their plantations.
Ah.
And when that avenue dried up because of the American Revolution, they had Australia was just sitting there. And in 1788, I think it was, when we established the first penal colony. I always like that word, penal colony. No, I just say, the penal system and all that stuff, and penal this, penal that, and
I'm just hearing penis, but
yeah,
that's okay.
No, but it was only, and people think the whole country was a penal colony, and it wasn't. There was other provinces were kept free of that, and those people that were either rightly or unjustly accused of crime, because remember years ago the justice system wasn't that thorough. You never seen too many wealthy people go to jail nowadays. Like nowadays, we just had a guy fucking Epstein. That was Miami. Guy was a billionaire.
Billionaire pedophile?
A billionaire pedophile. But it just shows if a billionaire goes to prison, it may not be a perfect system. It may, and just today, actually a police officer in Fort Worth,
She got charged.
Convicted of murder for going into her neighbor's apartment, shooting her neighbor, thinking she's going to her own apartment. That was her defense. I don't know the whole story.
Jumping back to Australia for a second, though, wasn't New Zealand Australia's penal colony?
I have no idea.
Oh my God! I wouldn't want to.
I thought that's what I had read before.
Really?
Yeah. I thought that Australia's penal colony
I'm sure there's a New Zealander out there that can answer that question.
I'm sure. I would love to know for sure. But
you know what? There's something about it. There was all these... I remember... You ever hear... We talked about this phrenology.
Phrenology is the study of the head.
The shape of the head. Right? Yeah, but there was always these pseudosciences in the 1800s, how you can predict someone's level of intelligence, their... I guess you call it their propensity for criminal behavior. And with so many criminals being sent to Australia, you would think that it would just be a rampant of mayhem and crime, but it isn't. I mean, there are adventurous people, they're strong people, they're very athletic people. They do well for the size of the country. There was maybe 32 million, maybe
Crocs and stuff.
No, but they do well. It's. If you think criminal behavior, if you suggest that it would be like there was a movie called The Bad Seed. Remember that movie, The Bad Seed?
No, I don't.
It was in the 50s where it was nature over nurture. It was a movie about a young girl who gets adopted by this military officer and his wife was perfect, and the guy was perfect, and the little girl was perfect. But it turns out she was a child of psychopaths. And that's why they call it the bad seed. And it was one of these things in the 1950s. You're coming out and say, hey, genetics has a lot to do with this. It runs into the system. But not necessarily, because Australia has been one of our greatest allies, has been very successful, an outpost of, I don't want to say, that sounds kind of chauvinistic when I say an outpost of Western civilization in the middle of Asia, or Austra-Asia, whatever you want to call it. That it was the extension, and it did very well. If you think of it, I mean, being Canada's north of the United States, and the United States is what it is. But Australia remaining Australia with China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Vietnam, all these countries around it is amazing. Of course, there's a little thing about the way the Aborigines were treated there.
Just a little horrible.
You know what? Like I said, in
We have no room to speak as Americans.
No, historically, whenever a more so-called advanced civilization comes in contact with one that doesn't have the technological know-how, they will take advantage of them and sublimate them and do. It's only in a time where you have enough philosophers and legal experts and people just to get the chance to think about it, say, hey, maybe it isn't correct to take the people that were here originally, put them in the camps, force them to adhere to your culture, get rid of their hunter-gathering culture and stuff like that. Maybe that wasn't so hot. But we find that out later. But everyone has done it. Any group. It happened in Asia. It happened in South America. The Aztecs did it. The Mayans did it. Obviously, our forebears did it.
Well,
but I mean, what I'm saying is they do. People.
Indians.
It's just the nature of human. Yeah. I'm sure the Neanderthals did it. I mean, the Cro-Magnons did it to the Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals did it to whoever was their ancestors. You know, whenever someone had the ability, they would just either wipe them out or use them as a workforce and stuff like that. And it's not that they were supposedly, we'll go on a discussion sometime about how the Neanderthal were not necessarily, if you could have someone with 100% Neanderthal genes, and you would not necessarily notice them any different than what we are.
Than Cro-Magnon genes?
Or Cro-Magnon, or whatever you want to call us now, the Homo sapien. What is it? It drills down, because Cro-Magnon and I am in over my head, Papa Joe.
I believe the way it went was...
I think they're all Homo sapiens, right?
I believe so.
And that's a subspecies?
Modern man is mostly directly descendant of Cro-Magnon.
But wasn't that... Is it a diverse branch of Neanderthal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Neanderthal was... we find a lot of Neanderthal in France.
Yeah. The cave. Yeah, the cave.
In that area there in Germany. Cro-Magnon further east.
Yeah.
And they just won out. And it was... I just read an article, and it had to do with the means by which their culture interacted with the environment. Cro-Magnon was just more advanced socially. Cro-Magnon had greater social expression. They more diverse socially, and they were able to adapt and overcome to the different environments, stimulus, problems. Whereas Neanderthal, and what this article said was, as an example, cave art is Cro-Magnon. Mm-hmm. Neanderthal, virtually none. And it goes towards how, in their tribal setting, how that society expressed itself. Whereas Cro-Magnon had this great expression. They had great, art. Obviously, with the art, probably was stories. There was probably a means of communication, language. Not so much with Neanderthal as they figure now. And so one just was better set up to survive than the other.
I don't know. I'm out of my depth once again, but there's certain cultures, because the Greek culture was sublimated by the Roman culture at the time, and the Greeks were more, let's say, erudite and more thought to the introspective with philosophy, where Romans, even though they did have philosophers and men of science, they were the engineers. They were the ones that employed or deployed the technology. That did the waterworks, the spas, the building, the roads.
Romans big, correct me if I'm wrong here, Romans big advantage over Greeks was they were very, and I'll use this word literally, they were very Catholic in their approach. They would say take over a culture, and they wouldn't. They would incorporate part of that culture into their culture. They would incorporate. Now, granted, there was a lot of people that were they had a class system in Rome. You could work your way through the class system in Rome. Not so much in Greece. Greeks conquered, and I don't think they did as good a job at incorporating other cultures into theirs. Greeks were Greeks. Romans had no problem, and at the towards the end, take Alexander.
Yeah.
Alexander made, I believe, a political decision to recognize Christianity. Because
No, that was Constantine.
Constantine, I'm sorry, not Alexander. Constantine.
Hey, I do know something.
And as a decision, it was brilliant.
356, I think it was.
That was Lyceum.
Yeah.
When
When he had his whole army baptized.
Yes.
And but it's funny.
But Rome had this propensity to just morph with other cultures, and what that does is it allows a pathway of inclusion for the people you've just conquered. You're a Roman citizen at some point, even though you were the enemy.
Well, yeah, just like many countries, the French, Napoleon tried to do that with the Napoleonic Code and things like that. When he went into Poland and said, listen, you're going to be protected on the Napoleonic Code. These are our laws. You're going to have rights and all that stuff. And it made sense. It's the funny thing about this right now is we started out talking about Australia and we ended up talking about this. And I know I am probably 70% to blame for that. If not 80% to blame. Because we're going to be taking a break in a minute, but we're going to get back to talking about Australia, and I want to talk about some of the cultural contributions of Australia and the things we think about. And it's not going to be the typical ones, not this Crocodile Dundee stuff and all that.
No, that's
even though he was.
Stuff.
And
that's been presented.
Well, movie stuff. There's a lot of movie stuff. I think. Actually, yeah. Okay. Well, this is Jim the Keys bartender. We're going to take a little break right now.
Whether you're one of our regular visitors to the Florida Keys or you can't wait to visit for the first time, you'll want to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the Florida Keys. To learn all the secrets, tips, and the stuff we don't talk about to anyone but each other, visit 43keys.com. Sign up for our newsletter and never miss any of the exciting things we have planned for you. That's 43 Keys. The number 4, the number 3, keys.com.
And we're back. Sorry to make that thing. We had to get back eventually. There's something I had to do. It's a fascinating story. We should talk about your father sometime and that. We were talking about Australia and where we left it off. We were talking, we're going to come back to it. We do have an upturn in, you hear this grinding in the background and stuff like that. That's Tyler doing his work at night. It must be hard to explain if you cut off a finger when it's dark when you're working with a power tool.
You just listen for the ouch.
No, I know.
It's light over there.
Got to go to.
We're building a new staircase. That's why I'm in it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a time critical. It's in the build a staircase in under 24 hours. So hey, don't give him a hard time. I'm just kidding. It's your house.
How to build
it's your house. So yeah. So we were talking about Australia and about their contributions and stuff like that. Not just the world culture, but how the U.S. Views Australia. It's our closest ally in the Far East. They're in the Far East. There's no doubt about it. They're on the opposite side of the world. Different hemisphere.
Yeah, they're over there.
Southern,
they're
Eastern.
Way over there.
Yeah, they're way over there. And during all the, whether right or wrong, World War I was one of the questionable wars, but World War II wasn't. That was the battle between Western democracies and despots and dictators. And Australia was on the winning side each time. They even went. One of the things I have to say, they were in Korea. They made the pivot from being the closest allies to and being in the Commonwealth from the United Kingdom to be the U.S.'s. U.S. is their closest ally with Australia right now. That's an argument. There may be an argument, say the British are or something, but the U.S. and Australia, that's our closest ally in that part of the world, along with probably Japan. Used to be Philippines, used to be one of them. It's kind of a shame right now what's happening with the Philippines.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah. But, and New Zealand. And we've had disagreements. I'm sure we had disagreements like you do with your friends. With your best of friends have disagreements. But then culturally, we share so much. There's music, humor. Same thing as Britain, but, you have the seamless crossover from Australian entertainment comes right over to U.S. and doesn't have to be explained, or even something with their Aboriginal music. When you hear how easily you accept it when you hear a didgeridoo being played.
Well, it's not like, you know exactly.
You know what it is. We find it cool too. Your fascination with steak, Outback Steakhouse, and shrimp, which is, just like the United States.
Well, we also know that.
And I think they came up with Australia was one of the main, with the Mad Max movies, the purveyors of the post-apocalyptic movie thrillers. And we handed it to Mel Gibson. There was one called The Boy and His Dog, and it was Planet of the Apes. That's kind of post-apocalyptic, but that's kind of ridiculous that that.
Well, hold on a minute. They're both based on plausible realities, right? The
Mad Max was just
thermonuclear war. You take out. There's no production of oil anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot about Mad Max.
People are still driving around muscle cars. That's the part. They're not working on developing any alternative.
Right. Well, you can't be a badass.
They're going to argue
in a Yugo. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to work.
But nowadays, you see what in a Tesla X Model X you can be.
Well, that would be the yuppie version of Mad Max.
I know.
It'd be Mad Brad.
Yeah. Well, it goes to 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds,
Well, Mad Brad.
Yeah.
Mad Brad and his misfits.
So, but Mel Gibson, let's go through that. Let's go through the hodgepodge. Well, you had Olivia Newton-John was one of the exports. You had Midnight Oil. I love Midnight Oil.
Yeah, they were great.
They were a protest band.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They How Can We Dance When Our Beds Are Burning. I think that was the name of the song, Beds Are Burning. And it was about the plight of the Aborigines in Australia. And they did another song called Blue Sky Mine.
I didn't realize that song was about the Aboriginal struggle.
With
Beds Are Burning.
Let's Give It Back.
Really?
The land.
Well, it makes sense now that you bring it up. Yeah.
How can we dance with...
Well, then again, you have In Excess, who speaks about...
Oh, my God. They did
emotional sexual commingling with Aboriginal love, white man versus black man.
Oh, they did all the music for the Sydney Olympics? They did it. Oh, they did. Oh, my God. The guy that's singer from it.
It broke my heart when Michael Hutchins died.
Oh, my God. The guy was amazing. The band had such great energy and stuff like that.
Well, they live on.
I know, without Michael Hutchins. You know what I mean? It's just like...
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's like the Doors after a while they were playing without,
Jim Morrison.
Morrison. So, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to go back to Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson had a rough year. The year when he got pulled over drunk, calling sugar tits. And, when you're intoxicated, people say that it's like a truth serum. You say what you want and stuff like that. And he did some amazing things in his career.
Can we look, we want to vilify. The right wants to vilify the left wants to vilify the right. Mm-hmm. The right wants to identify anyone who's an actor as the left. he's clearly not the he's a pretty conservative.
No, he's a member. He's a conservative. Well, it's funny about him. He was a member of Opus Dei. You know what Opus Dei is?
Yes.
It's a conservative Catholic movement.
Yeah.
And it's one that rejects the what do they call that? The second when they modernize the Catholic Church or try to modernize the Catholic Church. I forgot the term. Someone will know this, but they did this in the 60s. It was under Pope John the 26th, I think, if it's correct, when they started, instead of the clergy keeping their back to people most of the time, they turned and faced them. And instead of doing Latin, they did it in whatever native tongue they were doing it in. But Mel Gibson was a traditionalist and a very conservative. But it's funny, he was an actor who also liked to drink a lot. I had an uncle. I love my uncle. And he was very conservative Catholic, but not Opus Dei conservative. It was like Marriage Encounter or something like that. And he used to get shit-faced, and I didn't know he was getting shit-faced. And I got shit-faced, too. And it's not because my uncle did, because he never did anything to me. I never knew he was getting shit-faced. I just noticed later in the evening he wasn't as nice as he was earlier in the day. And he was a brilliant man. He worked for the NSA. He was an advisor. He was a Chinese language expert. He was one of the regional advisors for the Nixon administration.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So he was one of the main guys. He lived in Taiwan. He brought his family over there and stuff like that. And then I guess when Nixon found outs on it, he was done with it. And he started working more for the Catholic Church in different archdioceses with my aunt. Getting back to Mel Gibson, his thing with the Mad Max movies, and then he did Braveheart. You couldn't miss out with that.
Well,
the Passion of Christ, which is an interpretation of a Bible story. Okay, you believe it or not, you don't have to, but it was a brilliant depiction of a very, and I don't necessarily hold fast to those beliefs. It was incredible. It was incredible the way that movie was made.
How about The Patriot?
I think that was a little ham-handed.
I don't. I think
it was overly dramatized, and how they tried to bring in like the black guy. Oh yeah, you in the South. Yeah, you're a member of this thing. Oh yeah, you're gonna be. No, you know what? When we get this thing done, you're backpicking content.
You have to remember, Mel Gibson, especially later in his career, he's fronting the money for these movies. He's producing, directing, and acting. Mel Gibson is a brilliant guy. You know, like his politics or not, he's an artist.
I don't have a problem with his politics.
No, but some people do, obviously. But I see.
I think you're referring back to the anti-Semitism.
We said it. We said it already. We said sugar tits and stuff. You know, you have one drunken rant. I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine if anybody recorded, and I can't say what I said, not because I can't say it on the podcast. I can't say it because I don't remember because I was drunk when I did it. But I'm sure if there was the wherewithal, oh my God, the things that I've said were horrendous. You know, I'm sure in everyone's life, there's someone, you know, even if you think about the New Testament, Jesus was supposedly this almost like a Zen master of peace and love. But in one part, he goes into the temple and he finds guys doing their banking business in there, and he starts freaking out and starts flipping over all the tables. Just throwing out these people that are conducting, at the time, legitimate business that is allowed by the Pharisees. They allowed them to conduct business there. It's not their fault. That's where people did their business at that time because there was no banks. They went and said, well, we're going to go to the synagogue and then we're going to go and do this. We're going to do the same thing because that's where everyone gathered. And then you just freaked out because you're collecting money. And what do they do at church now on Sunday? Collect money.
Well, you said, if you think of
kind of ironic
his message as a Zen master, I think you hit the nail on the head. But getting back to Australia,
Yes, that's good. Thank you for bringing it back.
Australia has given us appreciation for coral reefs,
Yes.
great white sharks. The
Great Barrier Reef, unfortunately, is not doing very well.
right, and they're kind of on the lead of
Restoration.
coral reef restoration and the research as to what's causing it. They still, obviously, there's many questions, but that's their bread and butter.
It's rising water temperatures, water acidification, carbon
Absorption into
the water.
and of course there could be bacteria,
could be microplastics,
could be a lot of things. But Australia, just because of the uniqueness of the animals on Australia, the questions that opens up as far as evolution. Australia is such an important continent, and sometimes it's just taken for granted.
Do you know about this one? I made a brief statement about Jeremy Diamond, the ornithologist who was an ornithologist, and he did, even though it wasn't Australia, it was New Zealand, where he's studying the Maori tribes. He noticed that from like just miles away, because it's separated by mountain ranges and things like that, that the cultures of people that are genetically similar in their traits are diverse. Like the way that one's more peaceful, one's more warlike, one's more hunter-gatherer, another's more farming or herd or things like that. And he noticed, and he said, "Why? How did this develop?" And he thought of it in a larger theme of the world. And he came up with this book, his first, Guns, Germs, and Steel. And it was about how Western civilization at this time seemed to have, up until the late 20th century, seemed to be preeminent and dominant over all civilizations. And he made an argument on how it was accident of resources, convergence of technology, theory, and a population movement, and that at any one time, I think he may have told the story that China almost came around and discovered Europe 100 years before Europe started making the trip around Africa, and their trading posts were approaching Europe, and they had superior technology until the emperor of China didn't appreciate the growth of power of their merchant class. He passed laws to get rid of their ocean-going fleets and their trading empires and draw back in. To close China upon isolationists. He became an isolationist. And another historical proof that being isolationist and being close to the world is no way to do business, because it's like being social, like the Australians are. They're out there. They're out there in the middle of that. They're doing all their jobs and stuff like that, and they're spreading all this stuff. So I made that. I'm coming back to the Australian thing. They began as a penal colony. They came over. Some of the upper class British that, a lot of reasons why wealthy people, why would they move to another country that's so far from their own, is because there was very little land and opportunity for them in a more stratified United Kingdom. There's only certain things you could do, but there was cattle. At one point, there was a gold rush. And there was all these chances to do great big things in Australia, a big unexploited country. They think it's so big, just like the United States, there's no way anything's going to run out. But what turned out is they saw some areas of Australia, and I don't know what area it is, if it's the northeastern part, northwestern part, southeastern part, southwestern part, but there was a part that looked similar, the lush greenery and trees, to certain parts of England. They said, you know what they really miss? They could use some rabbits and some foxes and things like that. Now, rabbits, they did a number on the Australian ecosystem. The way they spread, where there was very little. You had dingoes, I guess, but a very little a counterbalance to a predator take out, like the fox, to take out the rabbit. And the rabbits would destroy grasslands. And they didn't realize that the soil in some of these places weren't as deep as the, well, I would say the how would you call that? The fertile soil, was it? I mean, sand is soil, isn't it? Sand soil? But it's just not fertile soil. It's barren soil.
Well, it's not sand. I would say soil.
Soil is dirt.
Yeah.
So we need to grow. Sand, you can grow certain things in sand. Not anything really. Not very productive.
No, probably not.
Just
but
need
the
a lot
fertile
of
soil was not too deep. It was a thin layer, and the rabbits just wreaked havoc. And
right, and the cattle, intensive grazing, cattle industry, and things like that.
So,
and as a scientist, ecology and all that, they didn't know what the repercussions were to the environment. They didn't know you could just. People even now say there's nothing man. There's people out there who say there's nothing man can do to change. They're legitimately. They say there's nothing man can do that can change the environment.
But
I'm not going to try to convince them.
No, I wouldn't
because
either.
they don't. There's no way, because they're debunking and ignoring 97%, 95% of recognized science and proven science. So what are you going to do about that? But we're coming back to Australia, and I didn't mean to say you decimated your land or anything like that. We're doing the same thing to our place here. All our grasslands.
It's almost unavoidable as populations grow. So what do? You have to manage it. So a question I would have, maybe I'll research it, is how have the Australians managed their resources to accommodate their population and their natural ecosystem? Because I think
it's a large country. I think they have anywhere between, and I don't like to do the Google search online for it and do the research, but it's anywhere from 34 to 42 million people, and it's a large landmass, though a lot of it is desert. And matter of fact, it was the last Aboriginal tribe that was brought in. Guess what year that was?
I have no idea.
1984.
Wow.
Yeah, that's late, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's 35 years ago. There were hunter-gatherers that were doing their own thing and shit like that, and they go and they bring them in, say, hey, listen, they didn't bring them in they didn't rope them in, because I think they started passing the laws in 1960 that gave full rights and voting rights to Aborigines, which they went a little bit slower than we. Well, I mean, I guess not. Same as we did,
right.
But I mean, it's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt. You got people hide behind that,
it's all
right?
part of Western culture, man. That's just how we deal
when
with
you
others.
supplement a native population. What are you going to do? If you're going to say, what are you going to say? Hey, listen, we're going to take it. We took it. It was theirs. Now it's ours. If you say it was legitimately theirs, then if you're professing to be, let's say, in Western culture, a Christian, you can't just take things from people. You can't.
Well, we did.
No, but you can't do it without legitimizing it, and how they like they legitimize slavery, like we legitimize slavery.
Well, it's real easy. You demonize them. So they're dumber than you. They're savages.
And we did it once again. Australia, we did this too. And we did gloss over the other things too. There's Russell Crowe. Who's the other Australian? Is Charlize Theron? No, she's South African.
No, who's the redheaded actress? Back in the early 90s? Tom
Cruise's wife.
Yeah. Good God, what's
Kate
her name?
Blanchett? No.
Nicole
Kidman. Kate Blanchett's English, right?
Yes. Nicole Kidman, what a heartthrob she was. She still
is.
But when she was first introduced to America, so to speak, she was gorgeous.
She goes in.
God,
how fucked up did we do? We screwed up that beautiful Australian woman by having her marry Tom Cruise, then she ended up with that guy Keith Urban, an Australian country singer, which how closely married are our societies if Australian people can become country singers and be accepted?
Well, I'm sure they have their version of country music.
Well, Keith Urban's accepted as a country. He's Australian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even within this country, there's crossover artists in country that you would never think cross.
Oh, yeah, that guy, the rap guy, that's just that there was a new rap song.
Listen, again,
and we're getting that way from Australia again. We're getting about it. The beauty of Australia. And I don't know if we paid enough attention to you guys in this one, but we do appreciate it. If we ever do a barbecue show, I think we should do a barbecue show where we're going to do it again, and we'll do shrimp on the barbie. I'll have Foster. I know Foster. You say shite. It's shite. Is that what you say in Australia?
Yeah.
Shite. You say Foster's shite, but that's what we got here, So we'll drink some big oil cans of Foster's. Throw a big our big. We got big shrimp down here.
If not, we'll find some.
Yeah, some of that
prawns.
The big prawns. Yeah.
We'll hijack a
prawn.
We'll hijack a shipment.
I'm gonna have a prawn. Throw it on the barbie.
No, no, bad.
We'll drink some of Foster's. And I know it's not Australian for beer, but that's the beer we got. And I do appreciate you guys listening. Well, if you can send us a message, go to keysbartender.com. Send us a message. I'll be glad to do a show for you. We'll do a little research on your town, wherever you're from. And if it's fellow podcasters, we do appreciate that. I think we'll talk about it in the next episode. The next thing that just came to mind.
Ooh.
Okay, this is Jim, and I'm here with Papa Joe. We're going to be signing out. Say goodbye, Papa Joe.
Goodbye, Papa Joe.